What is up, YouTube? KidMoto22 here, coming to you today with, well, I guess that's a challenge video is what you'd call it. I was challenged about a month ago by D-Cycle to the 7-question challenge, and I have not done anything about it. So here I am, and I'm going to give you my responses to the 7-question challenge. So let's get right to it. So question 1. What inspired you to buy your first motorcycle? It's a good question. Well, if any of you have listened to the 5 Dirty Bikers podcast, you'll know that I've been riding for a long time, and I rode as a passenger more when I was a kid. And so in terms of what inspired me to buy my first motorcycle, I'd have to say that a friend of mine bought a bike, and he was looking for somebody to ride with, and I thought it'd be a good idea. And I was ready to get into it again in my life, and so I went out and bought one, and my first motorcycle was a Kawasaki Vulcan 800. So I guess, riding with one of my friends was probably my reason for buying my first motorcycle. So, all right, let's get to it. Question 2. What type of riding do you prefer, group or solo? And twisties or straight? So let's answer the first part first. What kind of riding do I prefer, group or solo? I would say that I do much more solo riding. I don't know if I necessarily prefer one or the other, but that's just kind of what I do is probably more solo riding. So I think it just really depends on the situation, but really solo riding is where I'm at most of the time. As far as twisties or straight, I would have to say it's probably a mix of both of those. When I'm riding typically for my moto vlogs or, to back and forth to work commuting, I would say that the straight riding is really what we have around here. If I was just to tell you what my preference would be, I would say that I prefer the kind of larger swooping turns. That's probably my preference in riding rather than like twisties or just straight. I kind of like the much larger swooping turns where you can kind of go above the recommended speed. What is my favorite trip to take? Day trip, weekend trip, or longer? I would have to say my favorite trips are longer trips. I would say more oftentimes just riding during the day or commuting back and forth to work is the majority of my riding. But the longer trips are really where it's at for me. I really enjoy trips of 4 days or more. I went on a 3-day trip last year, or 4-day trip last year, and a 6-day trip last year. And this year so far, I've been on a 4-day trip, and I have another 6-day trip coming to the Midwest Moto Meetup. So if those of you have not heard, the Midwest Moto Meetup is starting September 11th through the 13th in Louisville, Kentucky. And I will be heading out for that for sure. And that trip is really something that I'm looking forward to, and that'll be a 6-day trip for me. So 2 days down, 3 days there, 2 days back. So I guess that's not 6 days. That is 7 days. So, but yeah, I'll be riding down to Louisville, Kentucky for the Midwest Moto Meetup, and it'll be a 7-day trip. So I'm really looking forward to that. Where's my favorite destination? So over the course of the last 2 years is where I've really been, or 2 seasons, I should say, really been doing my longer rides. And I would have to say that the last trip that I made with Mrs. Kidmoto, where we went to the North Shore of Lake Superior in Duluth, Minnesota, that has been my favorite trip so far. There's so many things there that make that riding of that trip great, and really not necessarily getting there, but actually being there. That trip in Duluth, Minnesota was great. Riding up the North Shore is amazing. The ride is great, the scenery is great, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting about that ride is the temperature changes. That ride really includes some pretty drastic temperature changes. And when you're riding on a hot day, you might feel like this. We were riding, I think it was between 80 and 85, and there was part of the ride where it was down in the 60s because you just get this part where you have the lake on one side and you have kind of the mountainous area on the other side, or the cliffs, or whatever you want to call it, and you might get into a part where there's no sun, and that area in there the temperature drops by like 60 degrees, or not 60 degrees, but it dropped down to like 60 degrees. So that was really incredible. So I would have to say that riding in the Duluth, Minnesota area so far has been my favorite destination. What is the biggest lesson motorcycling has taught me? You know, so I'm 44 years old, and I would say motorcycling has taught me that you really need to, if you have a dream, if you have something you haven't done with, and done yet, I should say, it doesn't have to be motorcycling, but if you have something that you really want to do in your life, do it sooner than later. I really wish I would have started riding sooner than I did. I really wish, or gotten back into riding sooner than I did. And I also really wish I would have started doing longer trips sooner than I did. I found that I've really enjoyed doing that. And we have a short riding season in North Dakota. And so, you know, you have to take advantage of the good weather when you can, and you have to make the most of it. And doing those trips, I wish I would have done them sooner, because really, I feel like I've lost out on a little bit of time, but I'm not regretting that. I'm just saying that, you know, if you have something that you want to do in your life, don't wait, do it now. So motorcycling definitely has taught me that for sure. Do I have any wisdom or lessons or anything for new riders? I would say when you're a new rider and you're first learning and you're first getting out there, don't give in to peer pressure. When you're in a group ride, or even when you're riding solo, ride your ride. That kind of peer pressure situation is just, it's not good. It's not conducive. That is where you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to get yourself in a bad situation, and you're going to get hurt. So my wisdom to a new rider would be just ride your ride. And the last one is, do I have any planned destination rides for this year? Yes, I do. So 2 weeks ago, or 2.5 weeks ago, my wife and I did our trip to Duluth, Minnesota, and that was one for sure that I wanted to do this season. And the second big one that I have coming up is the Midwest Moto Meetup 2020 in Louisville, Kentucky. And that trip is coming up September 11th through the 13th. So those are two things that I have planned that I'm definitely going to be doing this year. And I do want to get out and do some moto camping. And shout out to JC Cycles. I hope him and I can get out and do some moto camping this summer. That's one of my other things that I want to make sure that I have on my list. I have a new tent. It's a much larger tent than I used last season. And so this tent, it's probably, I'm not going to lie, it's way bigger than I need. But I got it specifically so that Mrs. Kid Moto and I could do some camping too. So, but yeah, I'd like to get out and do that too. So those are kind of the planned destination rides that I have for this year. So there we go. There is my 7 questions challenge in response to D-Cycle's challenge to me. And I'm supposed to nominate 3 other people to do this challenge. And so my 3 people that I would like to nominate are Being Here Now with Percy. If you don't know who Percy is, get out and check out his channel. I want to nominate Percy because I'd like to know what his answers to the 7 question challenge are. I would like to nominate Riding Dad. I've been watching a little bit of his stuff. I dig his stuff. I really like his bike. And so I would like to know what his answers are to the 7 question challenge. And my 3rd person, who would I nominate? Let me see. I would like to nominate Whit Meza. Whit did an awesome 1K in a day challenge, and I would like to know some of her answers to these because she's got some really trying things going on in her life right now, and I think these questions would be things that people would be really interested in knowing. And she's a new moto vlogger this season, and her channel's growing great, and I'd like to see what she has to say. So there you go. There's my answers to the 7 question challenge. I hope you guys liked them, and this is Kid Moto. I'm out.